once filled your mind with fear slowly becomes a calm guide, reminding you that your greatest strength has never been outside of you. It has always been waiting to be awakened from within. In a world filled with endless noise, opinions, and distractions, many people have forgotten how to listen to themselves. They constantly seek answers from social media, friends, or strangers, yet rarely spend a few quiet moments observing their own mind. Silence is not emptiness. It is the space where clarity begins. When you stop reacting to every external voice, you finally hear the one that truly matters, your own conscious awareness. A Shaolin practitioner understands that silence is a form of training. It reveals the thoughts you usually avoid, the emotions you often suppress, and the habits that quietly control your life. At first, sitting in silence may feel uncomfortable because the mind is accustomed to constant stimulation. But discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that you are meeting yourself without distraction. For the next 3 days, give yourself 10 minutes of complete silence. No phone, no music, no conversation. Simply sit, breathe, and observe. Do not chase your thoughts, and do not fight them. Let them come and go like clouds passing through the sky. As you become the observer rather than the participant, you begin to realize that your thoughts do not define you. They are temporary visitors, not permanent truths. During these moments of stillness, ask yourself simple but honest questions. What am I repeatedly telling myself? Are these words helping me grow, or are they keeping me trapped? Who would I become if I stopped believing every negative thought? The answers may not appear immediately, but with patience, your mind becomes quieter, and wisdom begins to replace mental noise. Silence also teaches emotional discipline. Instead of reacting impulsively to every criticism, disappointment, or inconvenience, you learn to pause before responding. In that pause, you gain freedom. You are no longer controlled by anger, fear, or pride. You begin choosing responses based on awareness rather than emotion. This is where true strength is developed, not in loud victories, but in quiet self-mastery. As this practice becomes part of your daily life, you notice a profound change. Your decisions become clearer because they are no longer driven by panic. Your confidence becomes steadier because it is rooted in self-understanding instead of external approval. You stop searching for peace in the world around you because you have learned to cultivate it within yourself. In silence, you discover that the strongest voice is not the loudest one. It is the calm, disciplined voice that guides you toward truth, patience, and lasting inner peace. Who you become is rarely decided by one extraordinary moment. Most people imagine that transformation arrives through a dramatic breakthrough, a life-changing opportunity, a perfect mentor, or a single burst of motivation. But a Shaolin practitioner understands a different truth. Your character is not built in moments of excitement. It is built in moments of repetition. The thoughts you repeat, the words you speak, the habits you practice, and the choices you make every ordinary day quietly shape the person you become. Every morning, before you have spoken a single word to another person, your identity is already being influenced. The first thoughts that enter your mind begin directing your attention. If those thoughts are filled with resistance, fear, or self-doubt, you will unconsciously carry that energy into the rest of your day. You may not notice it immediately, but it will appear in your posture, your decisions, your willingness to take risks, and your ability to remain calm under pressure. This is why the first conversation you have every day should not be with your phone, your emails, or the opinions of the world. It should be with your own mind. Most people underestimate the power of repetition because the results are invisible at first. They expect immediate change, and when they do not see it, they return to old habits. Imagine planting a bamboo seed. For a long time, nothing appears above the surface. Day after day, It seems as though your effort is producing no reward. Yet beneath the soil, the roots are spreading, becoming strong enough to support future growth. One day the bamboo rises rapidly, but its strength was never created in that moment. It was created during the unseen days of patient development. Your mind grows in the same way. Every disciplined thought you repeat is strengthening roots that will eventually support a stronger identity. The danger is that repetition works whether you use it consciously or unconsciously. If every day you repeat, "I am always behind, I never succeed, nothing ever changes," your mind accepts those statements as instructions. Your brain begins filtering reality through those beliefs. You overlook progress because you are searching for failure. You ignore opportunities because you have already convinced yourself they will not work. Gradually, your life begins reflecting the story you have been telling yourself. Many people think they are trapped by their circumstances, but often they are trapped by their identity. A person who identifies as lazy will find reasons to avoid action. A person who identifies as unlucky will see obstacles where others see possibilities. A person who believes they are incapable will hesitate even when they possess the necessary skills. Before changing your behavior, you must become aware of the identity producing that behavior. This does not mean creating a false image of yourself. It is not about pretending to be fearless when you are afraid or pretending to be confident when uncertainty exists. True transformation begins with honest observation. Notice the labels you have attached to yourself over the years. Perhaps someone once told you that you were not intelligent enough, disciplined enough, or talented enough. Perhaps you repeated those words so often that they no longer sound like someone else's opinion. They sound like your own voice. The first step is recognizing that these labels are learned, not permanent. For the next 3 days, pay close attention to every sentence that begins with the words, "I am." These 2 words carry tremendous power because whatever follows them slowly becomes part of your identity. If you repeatedly say, "I am impatient," your mind looks for evidence to confirm it. If you constantly say, "I am weak under pressure," you reinforce that expectation every time life becomes difficult. Instead, choose statements that encourage growth without denying reality. Say, "I am becoming more patient." Say, "I am learning to remain calm." Say, "I am building discipline one day at a time." These statements are truthful because they focus on the direction of your growth rather than the limitations of your past. Identity is also shaped by the promises you keep to yourself. Every time you decide to wake up when you said you would, every time you complete a task you wanted to avoid, every time you remain calm, instead of reacting impulsively, you send your mind a powerful message. You are telling yourself, "I am someone who follows through." Confidence grows naturally because your actions repeatedly confirm your words. This kind of confidence is far stronger than the confidence created by praise from others because it is built upon evidence rather than opinion. Notice how people often wait for life to become easier before they decide to change. They believe they will become disciplined once stress disappears, patient once people stop being difficult, or peaceful once every problem has been solved. But this way of thinking postpones growth indefinitely. The person you wish to become is not created after your challenges disappear. That person is created through the way you respond to those challenges today. Every difficult moment offers an opportunity to reinforce a new identity. When you choose patience instead of anger, you are becoming a patient person. When you choose honesty instead of excuses, you are becoming an honest person. When you choose perseverance instead of quitting, you are becoming resilient. Identity is not something you announce to the world. It is something you quietly prove to yourself through repeated actions. Be careful about the environments you repeatedly place yourself in. The people you spend time with the content you consume, and the conversations you engage in all influence the identity you are creating. If you surround yourself with constant negativity, complaint, and distraction, your mind gradually adopts the same patterns. If you intentionally expose yourself to wisdom, discipline, gratitude, and purposeful living, those qualities begin shaping your character. Your environment cannot determine your destiny, but it can either strengthen or weaken the habits that build it. Gratitude is another powerful form of repetition. Every day, your mind is deciding what deserves your attention. If you constantly focus on what is missing, you train yourself to live with dissatisfaction. If you consistently notice what is already present, the lessons, the opportunities, the people who support you, the simple gift of another day, you strengthen a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. Gratitude does not ignore hardship. It prevents hardship from becoming your only perspective. Remember that identity is always under construction. You are not condemned to remain the person you were yesterday. Every sunrise gives you another opportunity to repeat thoughts that strengthen rather than weaken you, to choose actions that align with your values, and to become someone your future self will be grateful for. Progress may seem slow, but slow progress is still progress. A mountain is climbed one step at a time, not one leap at a time. As you continue this practice, you will notice subtle but meaningful changes. Your reactions become calmer because you have repeated patience. Your confidence becomes steadier because you have repeated disciplined action. Your self-respect deepens because you have repeatedly honored your commitments. The transformation will not happen because you wished for it. It will happen because you consistently became the kind of person who practices the same small truths every day. In the end, your destiny is not shaped by what you occasionally believe about yourself. It is shaped by what you repeatedly think, repeatedly say, and repeatedly do. Every repetition is a vote for the person you are becoming. Choose those votes with awareness. Let every day become another opportunity to strengthen your character, refine your discipline, and build an identity rooted not in fear, comparison, or temporary emotion, but in wisdom, consistency, humility, and unwavering inner strength. One of the greatest illusions the mind creates is the belief that you must feel ready before you begin. People tell themselves they will start exercising when they feel motivated, begin learning when they feel confident, forgive when they feel peaceful, or pursue their dreams when fear finally disappears. They spend months, sometimes years, waiting for the perfect emotional state, but that moment rarely arrives. A Shaolin practitioner understands that readiness is not something you discover, it is something you create through action. The mind naturally seeks certainty because certainty feels safe. It wants guarantees before taking risks. It asks, what if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I am not good enough? These questions seem reasonable, but when repeated often enough, they become invisible chains. They keep you standing at the starting line while life continues moving forward. The tragedy is not that people fail. The tragedy is that many never begin because they confuse fear with a sign to stop. Think back to every skill you have ever learned. There was a time when you could not read, write, ride a bicycle, or perform countless tasks that now feel effortless. You did not master those abilities because you felt prepared. You mastered them because you were willing to be a beginner. Every expert was once inexperienced. Every confident person once felt uncertain. Every disciplined individual once struggled with inconsistency. The difference was never the absence of fear. The difference was the decision to continue, despite it. A Shaolin student does not train only on the days when training feels enjoyable. Discipline is measured by what you do when comfort invites you to stop. The purpose of training is not merely to strengthen the body. It is to teach the mind that action does not have to depend on emotion. Some mornings you will wake up energized. Other mornings you will feel tired, distracted, or discouraged. If your actions depend entirely on your feelings, your progress will always be unpredictable. But when your actions are guided by your values instead of your emotions, consistency becomes possible. Many people believe confidence comes first and action follows. In reality, action often comes first and confidence follows. Imagine standing at the edge of a cold river. You may spend an hour thinking about the temperature, imagining how uncomfortable it will be, and debating whether you should step in. None of that thinking changes the water. The moment of truth arrives only when your foot touches the surface. The same is true in life. Endless thinking cannot replace a single courageous action. For the next 3 days, challenge yourself to take one action before your mind has the opportunity to create excuses. If there is a difficult conversation you have been avoiding, begin it. If there is a project you keep postponing, work on it for just 15 minutes. If there is a healthy habit you want to build, start today instead of planning for tomorrow. The size of the action matters less than the fact that you take it. Every small step weakens the belief that you need perfect conditions before moving forward. Observe what happens after you begin. The task that seemed overwhelming often becomes manageable.
Your time matters. Your peace of mind does too. At Amiga, we make protecting the light you build easier when you bundle your auto and home coverage with us. Get your quote today.
Tragedy is not that people fail. The tragedy is that many never begin because they confuse fear with a sign to stop. Think back to every skill you have ever learned. There was a time when you could not read, write, ride a bicycle, or perform countless tasks that now feel effortless. You did not master those abilities because you felt prepared. You mastered them because you were willing to be a beginner. Every expert was once inexperienced. Every confident person once felt uncertain. Every disciplined individual once struggled with inconsistency. The difference was never the absence of fear. The difference was the decision to continue, despite it. A Shaolin student does not train only on the days when training feels enjoyable. Discipline is measured by what you do when comfort invites you to stop. The purpose of training is not merely to strengthen the body. It is to teach the mind that action does not have to depend on emotion. Some mornings you will wake up energized. Other mornings you will feel tired, distracted, or discouraged. If your actions depend entirely on your feelings, your progress will always be unpredictable. But when your actions are guided by your values, foot touches the surface. The same is true in life. Endless thinking cannot replace a single courageous action. For the next 3 days, challenge yourself to take one action before your mind has the opportunity to create excuses. If there is a difficult conversation you have been avoiding,
So if you graft onto a tree that is already there, that is natively growing,
on it for just 15 minutes.
and is already rooted in the soil,
You want to build.
it already survives the local winters. You can cut it and bind your cutting of the orange tree into the root, and you let the native roots feed your fruit.
That you need perfect conditions
Stop
before
planting
moving forward.
foreign
Observe what happens
seeds.
after you begin.
Start grafting
The
onto
task that
native
seems overwhelming
trunks.
often becomes
Trunks are real,
manageable.
real grievance,
Fear that appears
real
in
poverty,
others begins to
real
shrink.
anger, real
This is
corruption.
because the mind
Nobody has to
separates
invent any of those.
uncertainty from
The
its
graft is what gets
Once
bound
you enter
into
fear,
the womb.
reality
The ideology, the
usually
training, the
seems
coordination, the
than
money.
imagination.
That's what
The
the State
mountain
Department
that
laid
looks
out.
impossible from afar
Yesterday, they said, look, there's no guerrilla columns anymore. There's no political, or they did say there's political coalitions, there's academic centers, there's solidarity groups, friendship societies, and the exchange programs. One of them has carried something like 10,000 Americans to Cuba since 1969. Now, this is not a new charge. The United States Senate Committee called it one of the most extensive infiltration operations ever run in our country by a foreign power, and that was 50 years ago. 10,000 Americans. One of those Americans is now the mayor.
Do not interpret those moments as evidence that you should quit. Falling is part of learning. A tree doesn't become strong.
Directors, staffers, and now they're becoming politicians. So when you ask who's affecting the American population, stop looking for a spy. Spies were real, yes, but they're not the mechanism. The mechanism is the fruit that shows up on an American tree. It speaks with an American accent. It cites American injustice, some of it genuine, but it never presents itself as foreign because it isn't anymore. That's the entire point of the graft. They knew they couldn't come in with something that was foreign and plant it. They had to find people that they could graft into and say, oh, here's some ideas here that work perfectly for you in America. The Cold War, half of that report is documented history. The training camps, the Senate findings, the espionage convictions, etc., etc. They're not sowing seeds in American soil. They never had to. They found the trunks that are already growing here. They cut and they bound and they waited. So now we're sitting here with bitter fruit, and it looks like it's American, but it is not American. So don't stand there arguing about the fruit. Check the graft line, and that's exactly what the State Department is doing. They check the graft line. They're like, okay, bad, bitter fruit, but the tree is an American tree, so how is this happening? They're looking for the graft lines, and they're seeing that a lot of it is coming from Cuba, which was influenced at the time from the Soviet Union, but is still going on, now with help from Russia, China, and Iran. So much of what you're seeing on the streets, this is why they're always called useful idiots. They have no idea that they're being used, that this is not coming from America. This is a foreign entity. This is a foreign solution. And they are using our children, and they're using the disaffected to grow that bitter fruit on it. So when I go back now and I look at this guy who, set fire to a stone building, again, not real bright. What is he? What are his influences? Palestinian. Where is that influence coming from? That influence is coming from Iran. He's also talking about socialism and communism. Where is that influence coming from? Not America. That's coming from places like Cuba. This illness, it's a mental illness, but it is being pushed into the system. It's like
that failure
Our
is a
kids
teacher,
are
and
lonely.
that progress
Our
belongs
kids are
to those who
confused,
willing to
intentionally
begin
so,
before they feel completely
Uh,
prepared.
and they are, when they go to the hospital, they're going to somebody for answers.
To change the direction
The hospital,
of their
they
entire
don't know,
life.
they
Every
think
journey
that's a
toward
friendly
wisdom,
place to go,
discipline,
is
inner
not.
peace,
It's
and
a
lasting
foreign
strength
center
to
of
choose the same
poison.
way with the simple decision
Every
to
time
stop
they go
waiting
to a
and
professor
start
or
walking.
to, some group that's like, hey, you can fit in here, we're a
That
big
very few
collective,
people ever discover.
it's foreign
It
poison,
is not found in being
and they have
louder than
no
others.
idea.
Proving yourself
Now,
in
maybe
every
some of them do,
argument,
and it doesn't matter to them
controlling
because
every
they're so far
situation
gone.
life places
But
before you.
that's what the
It
State
is found
Department
in
was saying
something much
yesterday.
simpler,
Now let me show you
yet
how
far more difficult.
more is being
The
grafted
ability
in
to
when we
remain
take it to the
undisturbed
Tate brothers.
when the world around you becomes
Next,
chaotic.
stand by.
The person who masters this ability carries a strength that cannot be taken away by criticism, rejection, failure, or the opinions of others. Most people spend their lives reacting. A single negative comment can ruin an entire
NMLS
day.
182334,
One
NMLSConsumerAccess.org. APR for rates in the 5 starts at 6.799% for well-qualified borrower. Call 800-906-2440 for details about credit costs and terms.
Even how they see themselves.
Sometimes you look at your bank account and you think,
They become
I don't
prisoners of
I don't have the
circumstances
money
they cannot
to do the
control.
things I have to do.
But what if your peace no longer depended on what happened outside of you? What if no insult, disappointment, or obstacle had the power to shake your inner foundation? To become unbothered does not mean becoming cold, emotionless, or disconnected from life. It means developing such clarity that you no longer waste your energy fighting every battle that appears before you. It means understanding that your attention is your most valuable resource, and every unnecessary reaction is a piece of your life that you can never reclaim. Real strength is choosing your response instead of allowing the world to choose it for you. The greatest battles are rarely fought with other people. They are fought within your own mind. Every moment you are tempted to react impulsively, to seek validation, or to let frustration control your actions, you stand at a crossroads. One path leads to emotional exhaustion, the other leads to freedom. Every calm decision you make is another step toward becoming someone who cannot easily be manipulated by fear, anger, or external pressure. Imagine waking up each morning without feeling the need to prove yourself to anyone. Imagine moving through life with a quiet confidence that remains steady whether people applaud you or criticize you. This is not a gift reserved for a fortunate few. It is a discipline that can be cultivated through awareness, patience, and consistent practice. The more you train your mind, the less the outside world will control your inner world. Today, we are going to explore how to build that discipline. We will uncover
Percent of disease
why
control,
emotional
Yes.
drain
Okay,
your
so
strength,
this is coming from
why
CDC.
silence often
You brought up
carries
vaccine.
more power
Nowhere in my
than
notes
endless
was I planning on
explanations,
going into
and how
vaccines. I was gonna,
developing inner stability
you talked
Well, you
about
asked me about
healthcare.
John
I went
Kennedy.
into
What do you
it.
expect me to say
No,
back?
I'm
What's
glad
John
you
Kennedy?
did. I'm glad you. But since you did, let's look at some numbers because you're a numbers guy. You're an economist. So in 1970s in America, according to CDC, 1 in 10,000 children had autism.
regardless of them.
1995 was 1 in 500. 2000 was 1 in 150. 2010 is 1 in 68. 2020 is 1 in 36. The latest is 1 in 30. About 4.9% of boys today are identified as autistic. 1.4% of girls. How do you think that happens? Should we not consider vaccine as possibly one of the reasons for it?
We can probably think sunshine or God knows what else is
You think
possible.
sunshine causes autism?
Look, I'm just saying it's a silly argument, and I'm not going to. I don't see any point in having this conversation.
But you brought it up, and
You brought up John Kennedy. I mentioned vaccines as well. You said, "Do I like John Kennedy?" I instantly said, "I had no intention of discussing vaccines. Let's talk about something that's actually my area of expertise."
no, but you brought this up, and you had strong opinions, and I'm just sharing.
You said John F. Kennedy. What do you expect me to say if you raise Robert Kennedy?
Yeah, I think Robert Kennedy, he's a guy that brought
Why
up
did you raise Robert
concerns.
Kennedy?
Why
Why did you raise him in the first place?
I'll tell you exactly why I raised it, because you said the healthcare is the issue in America, and I said he brought up the food that we eat in America is a lot more processed in other states. I was going in the food
Definitely
direction. You went to vaccine. I never brought up vaccine. You brought up vaccine.
Okay, well, let's go back to food. Okay,
But no, let's stay on that.
that.
Let's stay on vaccine if you brought it up, and let's just move on past this because you brought it up. How do you feel when you see the data? If an average person like me or you, who is not in this space, you're a thinker, right? And if you see we go from 1 in 10,000 autistic rate to now 1 in 31, according to CDC, not pharma, what do you think could be those reasons?
Different definitions of autism.
Such
I have,
as?
like, you know, if I think back to my school class 50 years ago, there's about half a dozen kids I could classify as autistic today who wouldn't have been called that 50 years ago. But in terms of, I've vaguely seen some research contradicting the argument there's any relationship between vaccines and autism, and I have no expertise and I have no interest in the topic either.
I figured that makes sense why you wouldn't have any interest. What do you think about Alan Greenspan? He just passed away at the age of 100. What do you think about Alan Greenspan's legacy?
Very negative. The one thing we should remember Greenspan for is he rescues the finance sector when it causes crashes. That's the Greenspan put. When the stock market fell 87% in 1980, so it fell 20% in 1987 in one day, he basically guaranteed that all the financial firms would be rescued, and that basically led to encouraging financial instability and financial irresponsibility. I think he did a very negative contribution to the American economy.
Which American economist do you think, or a Fed chair do you respect that did a decent job in America? Who would you say that person was decent?
All the Fed chairs have come from the same school of thought, which is called neoclassical economics. That includes Ben Bernanke, for example. They have, in my opinion, they have a model of the economy which is, to use a great American satirist mention, their theories are neat, plausible, and wrong. And the only people that get considered for a position at the Fed are conventional economists. They don't even understand how money is created. So you've got not a single one I would take particularly seriously. If you wanted to ask me a mainstream economist that I have some time for, I'd mention Robert Schiller and Paul Romer. That's really about it.
Got it. How hard of a job do you think the most recent chair has, Warsh, that he got the job with being pressured to lower rates versus keeping it that way? And if you were given that job, just if you were given that job, this is your world, you follow it, what do you think would be the right move for him to make in this state of affairs that we're in America?
Well, I think the main problem in America is too much private debt. It's not the government debt that matters, and that's what all the mainstream economists obsess about. What causes financial crises is too much private debt, booms and busts in the level of rate of growth of private debt. So I'd be using the government's capacity to create money to cancel household debt, which is what we used to call a jubilee. That's what I'd be doing. And in terms of the interest rate, again, it's a very fallacious theory of economics. It says the rate of interest controls the rate of investment. That's the basis of, or the rate of consumption, in fact, is what so-called modern economic theories argue the rate of interest controls. They're completely fallacious. They don't work. And at the moment, if I was in charge of America's interest rates policies, I'd be reducing them because we're about to see a huge shock for the American economy coming out of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The impact of that on the capacity of the economy to produce goods and services, which will mean people can't service their debts anymore. And you're going to start seeing bankruptcies coming out of the inability to pay the debt levels people currently have because of the destruction of the productive capability of the economy from the war in a war against Iran.
So your position would be to lower rates. So you would agree with Trump because Trump wants to see also
in this particular point, yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Can you unpack that? Why? Because some people
within themselves.
push back on the president on lowering rates, and they're concerned if you lower rates, inflation may continue versus keeping it kind of where it is right now for things to level off. What is your position and the reasoning for lowering rates?
Well, inflation is not controlled by interest rates in any effective sense. If you want to reduce the rate of inflation, whether using interest rates, you have to do something like Volcker didn't cause a recession, put rates up that much. That's what actually, that's the only control mechanism is when you cripple the economy and therefore push inflation out that way. That's what happened under Volcker. I believe you can fine-tune it using the interest rate, which is the belief that conventional economists have. I think that's completely wrong. Now, what conventional economists don't look at is the level of private debt. They have no idea
Even though they've collected the data, they really have no idea of how high the level of private debt is. As you put up the interest rate, you make it harder to service that debt. And that's what can cause a downturn. What worries me about the current situation for the economy is that people are comparing it to the 70s when there was the oil price rose and that led to rising wages and that gave you a wage price spiral. Back in the 70s, you had strong unions, relatively speaking, certainly stronger than they are today. So when the price of petrol went up at the petrol pump, unions could go and lobby the firms to say we want a higher level of wages, and you got what's called a wage price spiral. This time round, unions are so weak, and workers, generally speaking, don't dare go and bargain with their wages. They're happy to hang on to their jobs. What you'll get from the increase in the oil price, which is coming courtesy of the Strait of Hormuz closure, is that workers won't be able to afford to pay their petrol costs. They will have to reduce what they do elsewhere, so there'll be less consumption coming out of the economy. That will cause a bit of a slump. And rather than getting a wage price spiral, you'll get increase in prices courtesy of the Strait of Hormuz. And that means workers will not get the wage rises they want. So what I expect instead is to see a deflationary crisis coming out of this. Initially inflation from the increase in oil prices and increase in cost of production of so many goods, courtesy of the other things which are blocked by the Strait of Hormuz. And then the workers being unable to pass those costs on to them in terms of their wages, a collapse in demand, and then you will have a deflationary crisis. In that situation, the last one you would think you want is a high rate of interest.
Got it. It's funny because you and the president agree on that. That is a part where they think that's the right move to. I'm not sure if I'm there with you and the president. I know you guys agree on that part of it. Whether lowering the rate's the right thing to do or not, the economy, a lot of people in America would love to see that happen. By the way, going back to the personal debt side, how much of that, and I'm curious from your standpoint, how much of that personal debt challenge happened the moment we got off the gold standard? Is that where you are with it, or do you have a different position?
No. What actually caused the growth in debt was deregulation of the financial sector. You used to have, if you go back and look what happened after the Great Depression, what Roosevelt realized and Irving Fisher realized was the financial sector caused both the bubble of the 1920s and the crash of the 1930s. And so we have to restrain the tendency of the financial sector to get involved in irresponsible behavior and Ponzi schemes. So things like the Glass-Steagall Act, reduction in the level of margin leverage, so margin debt used to give you 10 to 1 leverage, now it only gives you 2 to 1 leverage. All those things came out because the attitude of the people who experienced the Great Depression was the financial sector will lead to speculative bubbles, and we have to restrain that tendency of irresponsible behavior by the financial sector. When we got conventional economists dominating the profession starting in the 1970s, they basically thought everything is better as a free market, let the banks do what they want to do, and their belief was that if you deregulated the financial sector, there'd be more money for investment. In fact, there was more money for speculation. You had some, obviously, banks provided money, investment funds for telecommunications and internet and all that sort of thing, but they also did the subprime bubble. And the whole idea of the subprime bubble was borrow money, buy a house and sell it to somebody else for more money, which only worked if somebody else borrowed more money than you did. So you got this exponential increase in the ratio of household debt to GDP, which reached a peak and then crashed in 2006. That led to the crisis. So the banking sector has a tendency to be irresponsible, and it just runs with the nature of banking. So I blame that on deregulating the financial sector. I'd bring back regulations to make sure that the financial sector predominantly provide working capital for corporations rather than providing funds for gambling and speculation in casinos, which is what they do at the moment.
How do you do that? How do you do that? Because what opened up, we talked about it earlier with China, what opened up the market in China is when they started having more banks lending more money to small business owners. You and I both know when the big banks were bailed out in 2008 and they got all those billions of dollars, the money didn't go to the business owner. They kind of kept it to themselves. So what can we do
is
like,
where your true
how do
character
you
is revealed.
force them, like,
And it is
what do you
also where your
create
future
for
Well,
that
one-
money
one
to
thing
go to
takes
small
shape.
business owners?
Many people
Well, one
believe
thing
they
I
are
do would rule
responding
out
to
making
life,
it possible to make a
but
profit
in
out of funding a
reality, they are
Ponzi scheme.
simply reacting
So my favorite one
out
there,
of
of course,
habit.
is the housing
A
scheme,
criticism
housing
immediately
bubbles.
creates defensiveness.
And I've done empirical
A
work
delay
to show that what causes
frustration.
rising house prices is
Inconvenience
accelerating
creates anger.
household debt.
Praise creates
And that's
excitement.
that's caused the booms and busts we've seen in America and everywhere else.
These emotional
And what that
patterns
means,
become so
that comes
automatic
about because
that
banks
people
will
stop
claim
questioning them.
to be giving
They assume
a
this is simply
borrower
who they
an
are.
amount of money based on their
Yet
income,
every automatic
but they'll fudge
reaction
the numbers.
is a
You know the
habit
idea. What do
that
they
has
have
been
expression
practiced
for it? No
repeatedly.
ninja loans, no
Like
income, no
any
job, no
Yeah,
assets.
that's right.
Okay,
Changed
okay, they're willing to do that.
discipline.
I would make it.
Imagine someone
I would put a
pressing a
limit
button
on the
and
amount of
immediately
money that can be
controlling your
provided
emotions.
to buy a property,
They insult
based
you,
not on the income
and your
of
mood
the
changes.
buyer, but the
They ignore your
real or
message,
prospective income
your
of the asset
confidence
itself. So
They
if
praise
you
you,
buy, if you
and
you build a
suddenly
house
you
for
feel
rent, then
valuable again.
I would say the maximum
another
amount
person
that you
can
could
alter your
borrow to buy
emotional state
a house
so
for rental
easily,
purposes would be 10
you
times the
truly
annual
control
rental
your
income of
life.
the property. The same sort of
answer
thing
is
applies for
uncomfortable,
owner-occupied.
because it reveals
That would
that many
mean that it
people
was no longer
have
profitable
unknowingly
to lend
surrendered
into
authority
bubbles. You wouldn't
over
get
themselves.
runaway amounts of debt. The
They
level
allow
amount of
external events to dictate
money being lent would be
internal
related to the
without ever
to
coming
the
to
rental
question
income of the
Yeah.
property,
whether
which
this is
doesn't have the bubbles we see
There is
elsewhere.
always a brief
I'd also
phase
make it possible for banks to take an equity position when they made a
For
loan.
most people,
At the moment,
this
there's a very
space
good
is so
reason for
small
banks
that
not
it
to
goes
lend
unnoticed.
to entrepreneurs, and that is that
Hope
most
appears,
entrepreneurs
an
fail.
emotion
And if
rises,
you
and
if
an
a
action
bank lends to say
immediately
6
follows.
entrepreneurs,
But this small
then
space
5
is so
fails, and the bank
freedom-based.
loses its money on
When
5
you
of
begin
them,
noticing
and
it,
only makes an interest
you realize
earning out of
that you
the
have more
6th.
influence over
I
your
would
behavior
have banks
than
having
you
passive
perceive.
emphasis on passive.
Instead
I've got
of
enough
reacting
entrepreneurs who tell me the last thing I want is a banker
capable of
making
observing
decisions
your
on their
emotions
board, but a
before
passive
acting upon
position
them.
where
This
they take an
single
equity
ability
stake.
transforms the
And
way you
if they have
experience
5
every
companies that
challenge.
fail and one that succeeds,
Think
the
about
one
how
that succeeds
often
could be
regret
Amazon.
follows impulsive
So you make up for the
reactions.
losses elsewhere.
They
So
call
I
that
call
private
those,
equity,
that
right?
idea
Kind of like a private
I
equity
do.
model.
It's a relationship that took
similar,
years
but
to
it's
build.
money creation rather than
Emotional
private
decision
equity tends to
creates
pool
problems
existing
that
money.
remain
This would be banks
long
create
after
money when they
emotion
lend.
has
This is one
disappeared.
thing mainstream economists
A
do
moment
not
of
understand.
impatience
They
closes
simply
the
don't
door
want to
that
know that that's
patience
the
could have
case.
kept
But when a
open.
bank makes a
These
loan, it also
situations rarely
creates
occur
money. So
because
I want
people
to
intended harm.
limit that for
They
money
occur
being
because
created for
people
productive
allow
purposes,
temporary
not for
emotions to
speculative
become
ones.
permanent
And I
actions.
want to encourage getting money
Emotion
to
lasted only
entrepreneurs.
minutes,
So that idea
but
of
the
being
consequences lasted much
firms,
longer.
banks make
Emotions
loans to
themselves are not
entrepreneurs
enemies.
and get an equity
They
stake
exist
rather than a
for
loan
a
position.
reason.
I call those
Fear
deals
can
for
warn you of danger. Sadness
entrepreneurial
can reveal
equity
what truly
loans.
matters to
So
you.
you can make changes like that
Anger
that
can
change the
signal that a
behavior in the
boundary has
banking
been
sector
crossed.
and get back from the days when the banking
begins
sector
when
dominates
emotions
the
become
physical
leaders
economy
instead of
to the
messengers.
days when the banking sector was
They
a
are meant to
servant of the
provide
physical
information,
economy. That's what we
not
need.
direction.
Do you think
When
there
anger
almost
becomes
needs
the
to be
decision
a
maker,
massive
wisdom
shake-up for them to
disappears.
make that kind of
When
an
fear
adjustment?
controls
Because,
your choices,
you know,
growth becomes
if
impossible.
somebody wanted to go that
When
route, if
insecurity
somebody got elected
determines
and
your
they wanted to
actions,
propose your
your
idea,
potential remains hidden
real estate
beneath constant
valuation in
self-doubt.
America would probably take a
Mastering
25%
your
hit overnight
reactions does not
if that
mean
would happen,
suppressing your
right?
emotions.
And I've come up,
or
yeah,
pretending
I'd like to
I know
see
my
that
ideas.
exist.
Yeah, I have no,
Learning to
no
experience
doubt
them
my ideas will never get
without
tried.
becoming
Okay, so I'm
controlled by
aware
them.
that I'm putting through
Imagine
hypotheticals
standing
that won't
beside a
happen.
flowing river
But in the case
instead
of
of
trying to
being swept
reduce the
away by
level
its
of
current.
household debt,
The water
which
continues
is
moving,
like running at
but
about
you remain
100% of
grounded.
GDP, it should be
Thoughts
about
come and
30%
go.
of GDP
Feelings
at most.
rise
It's scary, by the way.
Yet you no
It
longer
is
identify
truly
yourself with every
a
passing
concern
emotion.
that I don't care who the president is on the left or the right. They have to know that's a real issue with affordability. Because if the
Not
average
permanent
guy,
definitions of
say
who you are.
28-year-old man,
One of the
cannot
most powerful
afford to
habits
get
you
married,
can
buy a
develop
house, and have
is the
kids,
practice of
we have a
pausing.
very big problem in
Before
America.
Yeah,
speaking
and that's the
Fix that.
situation you're in.
Yeah,
And it's a
before
global,
sending a
it's a
message
global
written in
phenomenon.
frustration,
House
pause.
prices used to be roughly
assuming someone
three
else's
times household
intentions,
income.
pause.
When you had a
This
single
pause
income
may
earner
last
back in the
only a few
50s,
seconds.
male income earner.
But within
Okay,
those
and the male
seconds,
breadwinner could
clarity
support a wife and
often
3
replaces
kids
confusion.
and buy a house at the same
first
time.
reaction
That's the
usually comes
so-called
from
American dream.
conditioning.
women's liberation, I think, actually contributed negatively here because women got into the workforce and it's now 3 times 2 incomes. The finance sector benefited more from women's
So wait a minute,
liberation than women
so
did.
you think the idea, because in 1970, we had, I think 1970, we had a record-breaking, most kids born in America, it was a 3.59, you know how we're at 1.58 right now? I don't know what it was in 1970. Can you look up when was the highest birth rate in America? The year it was one of the highest birth rates in America,
because they
Steve.
have become focused only on winning.
Only 35% of women were in the workforce. Today it's 70% in America. So you think that wasn't a good thing for the economy?
Relationships.
No, it was the benefit of that went to the finance sector rather than individuals. If you basically thought if you had two people working, you got twice as much income, you have a more comfortable life. That was the fantasy of expanding women's role in the workforce, and the women and the families will benefit. Instead, it meant that when you went to get a housing loan, they took two incomes in, double the amount of money to let you borrow. You end up servicing that debt. In fact, the increase in incomes ended up causing an increase in house prices, making houses unaffordable. So I've gone from the days, it's not as bad in America as most of the rest of the world, I might add, but the ratio of house prices to income used to be about 3.5, now it's about 10. And that just means
That's a
enormous
scary
strain.
side. That's a scary side.
So we need to get out of that, but the thing is, to do it, you've got to reduce the level of household debt and reduce house prices. Now, as you said, if you do that, you'll make many people who think they're currently asset rich, make them asset poor. So I came up with a proposal that I call a modern debt jubilee. And the idea with a modern debt jubilee is the government can create money, and it creates that money and gives every American adult $100,000 and says if you have debt, you must pay the debt down. So if you have a two-income family, they got $200,000, they've got a mortgage of $250,000, they've got to pay that $200,000 off, they end up with a mortgage of $50,000. So they benefit in that sense. So the cash injection in the first place can cover the fact that the price of the house might fall. And of course, most people think they're asset rich when they've got an expensive house. But to get benefit from that house, they've got to sell it. This would be a way you hang on to your house, you have a lower level of debt, and we get you out of the debt squeeze you're in right now, and then we limit how much banks will lend in the future, so we don't have the same ridiculous level of household debt to buy a house in the first instance.
So in other words, let me restate what I think you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong. A form of a quantitative easing for individuals, not corporations.
That's a reasonable way to put it. That's a reasonable way to put it.
I got it. That makes sense. And by the way, where are you at, Steve, on the topic of what's happening right now with the wealth disparity? We've always heard the saying, rich get richer, poor get poorer, right? I pulled up something yesterday when I was looking at it, when, the last 50 years, who were the top 5 richest men in America, last 50 years? And one of the things I noticed is 50 years ago, the difference between first place and second place was, 10%. Okay? And it went to 20%, and then 25%. Today, the difference between first place and second place is 300%. And Elon is at the top with 1.3, 1.4, which I have no problem with. I'm the capitalist. You and I may differ in this topic. But what role do you think AI is going to play on accelerating, creating extremely wealthy people and a lot of people being left behind? And then, if that does end up happening, your position, maybe you're pro-AI, maybe you're optimistic that AI is going to do good for the economy, but what role do you think AI is going to play the next 5 to 10 years? We're just seeing it right now. What do you think is going to happen?
When we set out to create a shoe that blends comfort, function, and luxury, we had the choice to make it fast. We had the choice to make it cheap. We chose Nike. Instead, we chose Tuscan Hero. We chose true Italian craftsmanship, each pair touched by 50 skilled hands. We chose patience, spending 2 years perfecting every detail, and we chose the finest quality at every step. Introducing the Future Looks Bright collection. Not rushed, not disposable, not avoidable, rather intentional, luxurious, timeless.
May experience identical setbacks. One sees proof of failure and becomes discouraged.
Well, first of all, I think there's going to be a bust.
Sees an opportunity
This is classic boom and bust cycle in capitalism, just like with railways back in the 19th century. So railways were a private technology when they first came in, and everybody thought they were going to make an absolute fortune out of railways. Railways, particularly in the UK, just crisscrossed everywhere. They all went bust, and you only got a handful of operators surviving, and then the state bought them up.
How long did that take, by the way? How long did it from start to bust? What was the...
I can't recall. I haven't done
Is it over 50 years?
I've done 15 years. 10 to 15 years.
Right.
AI is much faster than that. So we're seeing a huge build-up right now. From what I've seen in terms of the amount of revenue these companies are getting versus the cost they've got, their costs are 5 or 10 times the revenue. In other words, they're losing large amounts of money. And so you're going to come up with only a few survivors coming out of this. And I think the cost of AI is going to increase quite dramatically as well. At the moment, people are using AI to make funny cartoons of their father-in-law or mother-in-law. The days when that's feasible, they're more mother-in-laws. Oh, mother-in-laws, I'll agree with that. But this, we're getting a boom in the bus. So we're getting a boom at the moment. The bus will come, I think, in the next 1 or 2 years, and then you're going to get a large collapse. All the money that was put into it will be lost. Money will still be distributed in the system, of course, but it won't be in the hands of those who paid out for the data centers and so on. So I see that happening. With AI in general, I know that it's a long way from this being technologically feasible. But the thing which Musk is talking about, and I agree with him on this front, is that if we got to the stage where robots could replace humans, then there would be no capacity for workers, for anybody without capital to get an income. So the only way to survive that is to have the income generated by the economy as a whole. And that means you get basically a universal, Musk calls it universal high income, but you have to create the money that enables people to buy, because the vast majority of people won't have ownership of capital, and they won't have the capacity to get unskilled jobs anymore anyway. The robots will have them. So if you're going to avoid the Hunger Games outcome, you have to give everybody enough money to be able to buy the goods being produced by these firms and live a comfortable life.
Is a sign of care.
But I can't see that happening. I think we're going to see climatic issues long before we get to that point.
Let me. By the way, when is your birthday? What month?
But there is an important difference between thoughtful preparation.
Your March, okay, early March, mid March,
like.
Okay. So you're in Aries. Are you like after the 22nd?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So my dad's also the same as you, and it's funny just talking to you. I'm
same thoughts repeat themselves.
I'm wondering why. How much of your own philosophy on economy and finance, how has it worked for you when it comes down to making investments with your own money?
I don't invest
at all.
I'm building a company. I've got a company called Revelation. So I'm making a software product. I've done a couple of attempts at getting businesses started. If I'd done them in America, they would have been successful, because the scale of the American economy is much larger than the Australian economy. So one attempt I made was...
capitalism. That was a very big
No, I like the scale of the American economy. It's a small economy.
You flirted a little bit. You flirted a little bit with the,
Equally, Europe. We've been quite successful in Europe
but
as well.
I think you made America look a little sexy. The way you said it, you couldn't help it.
That's fair enough. I mean, there is one thing I will say in favour of American culture: failure is not a problem. One of my favourite lines is to stand up as saying success is the first step on the ladder of failure, and vice versa. So being able to fail and give yourself up to keep on going, that's part of what the attitude of America is, and that's a positive contribution to enabling innovation to occur. So you need that to some degree. But yeah, in terms of what people call investing, I call speculation. You're buying shares and buying houses and expecting to increase in price. I know the logic behind that. It's all driven by financial models. So I've stayed out of that. But I am trying to form a company right now called Revelation, and that'll be marketing the software package both for data analysis and for economic planning.
Steve, did you fall in love with an American girl that broke your heart many years ago, and you just had spite for America? Did a girl break your heart in the past? Is that what it is? It seems like Mary was wrong. It's not your fault, Steve. I just want to let you know, screw Mary. You're okay. We're going to be fine. I'm giving you a hard time. I'm saying if your ex's name was Mary.
In fact, I made two. I said two things I'd never do was marry a nurse or an American, and I did both in sequence.
Really?
Yes.
So you married an American nurse?
No, I married an American singer.
Oh, singer. I thought you said nurse. And I'm
The
assuming
first wife was an Australian nurse. The second was an American singer.
so the second one succeeded. You're still married.
No, lasted about 2 years, and I wish I'd never done it before.
We just figured it out. We just figured out your economical philosophy in the last 20 seconds with what happened on the second one. But let me ask you, do you ever sit there, Steve, and wonder and say, maybe I should have gone into the market. Maybe I should have invested. Maybe I should have bought some Bitcoin. Maybe I was wrong on some of my...
Oh, Bitcoin, definitely. I should have bought Bitcoin, because I was supposed to introduce it when it cost £1 a Bitcoin.
Stop it.
There are people who carry events from years
Did you say a pound a Bitcoin?
they happened yesterday.
Yep, roughly speaking.
And you said no to it.
Repeatedly.
I just, when I had the energy you just explained to me, I thought this isn't going to work. Now, I should have done what Newton did, not the first time, and say, this is a crazy bubble, other people are idiotic enough to do it, I'm going to buy and put $1,000 I can afford to lose, I would have made $1 billion. Okay, so it's my mistake, I didn't do it. So yes, I do have regrets like that.
How about free market? How about the stock market? Like, do you look back and say, you know, because an element of investing, and I'm so glad you're in free market capitalism right now to build a company. God willing, you build it and you sell it. And I actually hope you do, because I love when these types of I just had Mehdi Hassan on. I don't know if you're familiar with Mehdi Hassan. He was on, I think he was on 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. We had a very good conversation, great back and forth debate, and you know, he's a professional debater. I mean, he does this for a living. It was a phenomenal conversation. But I said to him, I said, you know, how does it feel going from working at MSNBC and they're paying you salary to now you're a capitalist? You have to hire people, you have to build a company, and he had a smart, we laughed about it, you know, kind of went through it. I hope he exits for $100 million. I hope he, because, you know, I grew up in a family where my mother was a communist. We grew up, our Bible was the Karl Marx Communist Manifesto. I've read the book, you know, my mother's side, they come from Baku, Azerbaijan, so her family was all about, my dad was pro-Shah, so he was an imperialist, and so they married each other. They married and divorced each other twice. And so, no, literally, that's what happened. They married and divorced each other. They married, my sister's born, they divorced. 2 years later, they remarried, I'm born, divorced. And they never got married again to anybody. But a big part of my financial philosophy comes from me hating rich people and saying these guys are greedy, it's all self-interest, that's all they care about. And then I went into business, and then I started off with Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter, and then next thing you know, I made some money, then I built a business, and I realized you're not going to win if it's only you making money. And so I gave everybody equity. And then I realized when everybody owned a piece of the company, they ran it a different way. They picked up the trash. You know, they said hello to people in a different way. There was a certain incentive to it. So I'm glad you're getting into the business, but do you think about it and say, maybe I should have gotten involved in equities 30, 40 years ago?
Not equities, but the software package I'm designing now called Ravel, I came up with the idea for that 30 years ago. In fact, it's Ravel, the main thing Ravel does that in terms of data analysis that's better than anything else on the market is that it handles multi-dimensional data that's more than rows and columns in a spreadsheet. And in fact, the system that most people use is called a pivot table. And it turns out that pivot tables first invented 7 years after I came up with the idea that I'm now putting into Ravel, which is a graphical multi-dimensional object for handling, you know, complex data and being able to analyze it and see it easily. So yes, I could have made the decision to go and push that forward. I would have come up with a software package that predates Excel, that would have trashed what Excel tried to do with pivot tables. So I wish I had done that, but I didn't. So I'm now doing it a bit later in age.
Would you mind spelling it so guys know how to find it? Ravel?
Ravel, R-A-V-E-L. And the company name is Ravelation, not Revelation, but Ravelation.
And so is there a website to it? Is there a website?
Yes, we're just about to launch it. In fact, there is a Patreon page, which we're doing at the moment, very basic. But that's where you can get a copy of Revelation from at the moment for a sort of Patreon support level.
Can you send that link to us so we can put it below for the audience to see it?
We'll do. It'll come out about two. We have to do an initial seed launch. We've done a pre-seed round. Using, you know, the idea of a safe agreement, so shareholders agreement for future equity. We've already done that.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
So we're happily doing a seed round in about 1 or 2 months' time.
Beautiful. If you send that to us, we'll put it below. Let me continue. So, the question on this, as we're going into it, and we're talking about, you know, investments, capitalism, all of that. Have you followed Jim Simons? Do you know about Jim Simons, Renaissance Technologies?
Yes, and I also know Louis Kelso, who talked similar sort of ideas, the Capitalist Manifesto. You were talking a bit about worker-managed firms fundamentally a moment ago,
right.
And it's a similar sort of idea. You want people to have a commitment to the firm they're in, and just having a wage doesn't necessarily do that. Having an equity position can enhance that. Apparently that's a large part of the success for BYD.
Yeah, do you remember that one socialist who said, I pay everybody only $70,000 a year, and Bernie Sanders liked the story of the guy went viral. This was like 5 years ago. I don't know if you remember that story or not. What was it, guys? Who was the socialist that paid his employees $70K a year, something like that, and he went viral? Can you pull up his name? Yeah, I remember. So when we had him on, Gravity Payments. We ended up having him on. What was the guy's name? He had a long hair. He looked like a guy. He looked like Brad Pitt, good-looking guy. Dan Price was his name. Dan Price. And I had him on the podcast once. This was probably 5 years ago. And again, politically, economically, we probably disagreed where we were at because he was more of a socialist. But then when I asked him the question, I said, so you pay everybody 70 grand? He says, yes. Including your C-suites, yes. I said, how much equity do you give your guys? And he was startled by that question. I said, if you're so much about spreading the wealth, why don't you give them equity? I said, so you got a $100 million your company and you own 100% of the company? I do. I said, that doesn't sound like, your values match each other. So it made for a great conversation. I don't know what happened to his business. I think he got in trouble, but I'm excited to see what this next phase you're going. By the way, how much you think, if I were to ask your best friends from high school, guys that you've known the longest, okay, people that, if you ask my friends, they'll be able to tell you who I was and all this stuff, would they consider you a pessimist or an optimist?
Back in those days, an optimist. Okay, I've got a very optimistic orientation, a very outgoing personality. So I tend to be optimistic. But the more I learn about society and the state we're in, pessimism is being forced upon me.
Do you regret that? Do you wish you were the old optimist?
Well, I was the optimist if I didn't know what I know right now. So, like for example, one career I could have had was being a professional tennis player, and that would have been a very different lifestyle to what I've led. It was like a fork in the road moment where I had a choice between professional sports career or academia, and by sheer circumstance, academia won out.
What happened? What was the event that you didn't go tennis? Because, why wouldn't you go tennis over academia?
Well, because I was a student at the time at Sydney University, doing an arts law degree, studying economics, and horrified by how stupid the economic theory is, still even more horrified today than I was then. And then there was a student strike at university which led us to overthrow the economics department, well, not to overthrow it, but to create a rival department. I got caught up in all the politics of that, and that meant my tennis went from 5 days a week to 1 day a week, and I dropped from that incredibly high standard that you hit when that level. I was doing 20 hours a week of tennis, plus a ludicrous amount of running and weightlifting and cycling, while doing a university degree. And then with the academic, the excitement of the student strike and taking on economics and challenging it, that's become my life. So in one sense, I'm enjoyed the life I've led. I'm glad I've led this life, but I'd like to have two of me. I would have liked to try the tennis as well.
Is that not crazy when we look back and we're like, what if I would have done this and what if I would have done that? Who would it have become and what would I have done? But by the way, how old were you the first time you read Communist Manifesto?
I first read Capital as the first book I read by Marx. I was 20.
You were 20. Yep. So you read Capitalist first, then you read Communist Manifesto.
I read everything Marx ever wrote on economics. That was my master's degree, because when I read Capital, this is a bit of a funny story. At the end of that student strike at Sydney University in 1973, everybody in the strike was a lefty, okay? But you'd call them communists.
Sure, for sure.
And they said all the various strikes succeeded, all sorts of reform of education at Sydney University that year, and we had let's have a Marxist reading group. So in the middle of a Sydney summer, and I'm talking a glorious summer when you should be spending your time on the beach, a bunch of 20 or 30 lefties sitting in a cold room inside the Sydney University reading Das Kapital. Now, part of what I knew was in Das Kapital was the argument that machines don't add value. Machines transfer the value they hold, but they don't actually add any extra value to the system. And I remember walking across to the beginning of this reading group with a colleague, looking at over Sydney's skyline and where Sydney, you can see the whole of Sydney from Sydney University, and there were hundreds of cranes. And I said, I want a very good explanation by Marx as to why those machines don't add value. So I read the book very carefully, and I found that Marx had a brilliant argument about what he called the gap between use value and exchange value in production. And I applied that to machinery, and it led to the deduction that machines do add value. So I then said that to my bunch of fellow Marxists, and they'd already brainwashed themselves into believing the Labour theory of value. They laughed at me. So I then decided that's going to be my master's thesis topic, to find where Marx came up with those ideas. And I didn't do a master's until I was about 20 years older. I finished my undergrad in 73. I began my master's in 1993, I think so, 20 years later. But I went through Marx looking for where he came up with those ideas, and I found it. So I've read everything Marx ever wrote on economics, including the Communist Manifesto.
But would you have considered yourself a leftist at 17?
No, I was quite right-wing.
So academia got a hold of you and kept that mindset with you since then?
No. Marxists dislike me about as much as neoclassical economists do, okay? It's very hard to put me into any particular category. I'm very much a capitalist entrepreneur at the same time as being an intellectual. So I don't think I've got hold of anything. What I look for is good logic. And what I found in Marx in those first 7 chapters was brilliant logic that contradicted a fundamental argument he believed in, which is the labour theory of value. And the labour theory of value was needed to believe that there'd be what I call a falling rate of profit, and a falling rate of profit was needed to believe in socialism. So when I read that book in 1973, I thought Marx's arguments that socialism is inevitable were wrong. Okay, so pretty hard. I mean, the first people I attacked in terms of attacking their economic thinking was neoclassical economists. The next group was Marxists.
But by the way, the school you went to, did they also ask you to read Wealth of Nations or Hayek or any of the von Mises, any of this stuff, or not really?
Well, it's all my own reading. I mean, at university, at school, I went to a Catholic school, so I read the Bible more than I read any economics text, but I read books by Samuelson and Hicks when I was at school. So my basic argument is you've got to read to understand what people are talking about. You don't just take newspaper cutouts to understand the theories.
You just took me to a completely different angle. I mean, I wasn't even going to go this angle with you.
Yeah.
I'm 47. I'm about to turn 48. I don't know your age, but if you've been doing
73.
Okay, so 70. By the way, you look like the guy, the Hollywood actor who was Batman's mentor. I don't know what the guy's name is. You look like him.
Meredith Bergman.
Can you pull him up? Is that the one? Is a very, very good-looking guy. No, I'm thinking Alfred. Who is the Alfred guy in Batman?
Alfred, you're thinking Batman's
that guy right there.
Okay.
You look like him. So you're a good-looking man. It's a compliment. Take it as a compliment.
I'll take it that way.
You know, I'm 47. You're 73. It's tough when we get older to talk about the mistakes we made earlier. What advice would you give to young men? Like, you know, being where you are right now, and you know, you've seen a lot. You've been all over the world. You've had some ideas. Maybe some of them became right. Maybe some of them you got wrong. What feedback would you give to young men? Young men are very confused today. What advice would you give to young 16, 17, 18-year-old men?
Given the fact that I expect climate change to cause the social system to collapse, I'd say learn how to hunt. I hate to say. But
you all of a sudden became an optimist. That was a... So we went back to the pessimist. So you don't think the future looks bright?
No, I don't think it looks bright.
Oh my God, that's scary. So you think it looks catastrophic?
Yes.
By the way, did you ever end up having kids or no?
No. My first wife had a disease called endometriosis. She was infertile. My second wife was far too old. My third wife already has 3 kids.
Yeah. And, if you were 25 today, would you have kids today?
No.
Wow. Man, they really got a hold of you.
No, reality got a hold of me.
Come
I can
on.
see what's...
I can see inside of you. There's the sense of humor, lighthearted, fun, positive side, but they got a hold of you.
No, what's got me a hold of me is facts. Okay, I've read massively in the climate change literature as well, and work with climate scientists, and I can see what they're seeing coming, and I'm fucking terrified. And the last thing I want to do is have a child to plug through what I think is going to come our way in the next decade.
Did you see the recent report that came out? I don't know if you saw this recent. I'll show it to you, please.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want you to lose your shit and get upset at me. This is a report that came out. I'm just going to read it to you, and I want you to react to it any way you want and tear it apart if you want to.
Yeah.
But this is from Department of Energy that just came out. And it says, this is from the website energy.gov. Guys, I just texted you the link. If you want to go to it, you have it. I just literally texted it to you. Department of Energy issues report evaluating impact of greenhouse gases on U.S. climate and invites public comment. And one of the things they said here is the severe concern that they had. If you read this entire report, I'm not going to read the entire report to you.
Yeah.
It was overly exaggerated on how bad climate change is going to be for the last few decades, and this is coming from the state. Do you agree with this report, and have you had a chance to look at the
total
report?
bullshit. Total bullshit, and I can tell you why.
Tell me.
Okay. this is what economists have said. This is William Nordhaus, and if I had to have anybody blamed for the state of what I expect to be the state of the planet in the next 10 years, it's William Nordhaus. His work on climate change is why we've done so little about climate change and trivialised the dangers. Now, to give you one example of why he said climate change wasn't dangerous, when he first tried to quantify the impact of climate change on the economy, this is back in 1991, he said that his prediction was that 3 degrees of warming by 2100 would reduce GDP in 2100 by 1/4 compared to what it would have been if there's absolutely no global warming at all. Now, 1/4 means that the impact of 3 degrees of warming would be to reduce the annual rate of economic growth by 1/40 of the precision with which we currently measure it. So we currently, you get reports GDP has risen 1.2, 2.1%, 2.2, so you work in the 0.1%. He said a 0.025 impact, which is so true. You can't even measure it.
Can you say who said this?
William Nordhaus, the guy who got the Nobel Prize for his work on climate change in 2018. Now, as part of that, he assumed that a roof would protect you from climate change. Okay? So you mistook weather for climate change, weather for climate. And that's the basis of all the low predictions you're seeing right now, all coming out of economists. And they have literally pretended that you can use data about the impact of temperature on GDP across the planet today to predict what's going to happen out of global warming over time. And that is completely mistaking what rising temperatures mean. And so I think that particular Department of Energy report, I'm sure it's based on the work of economists, and it's a load of nonsense.
So you don't side with what they're saying here. Let me just read it to you to fire you up a little bit. It says the report challenges the mainstream view on climate change, arguing that climate risk may be overstated, the benefits of emissions cuts may be smaller than advertised, and the economic costs of aggressive climate policies deserve greater scrutiny. So you're for, you side with the Al Gores of the world, you side with the AOCs of the world, you side with the
I side with the scientists.
You side with the scientists. Scientists have done a lot of things wrong in the past as well, right?
Well, mate, you're talking to me through something invented by a scientist. You're seeing me through something invented by a scientist.
By capitalists, I would say by an entrepreneur, right?
Entrepreneurs don't have engineering degrees. If an entrepreneur doesn't have an engineering degree, he can't make something that involves engineering or science. So it isn't the entrepreneur, it's the knowledge levels that we have. And we don't give enough respect to scientists.
Yeah, those are engineers to me. But they also get things wrong. I mean, it's not like to put here and sit there. And so let me ask this. So for you, you're not optimistic about the future. You wouldn't have kids today if you were 25. So then why have kids? Why get married? Why buy a house? Why have a career? Why create Rival, the company that you're building? Why buy your product? If we're going to die anyways, let's all be negative. Let's not go to the website. Now, let's not support Patreon.
I want to change our direction. I think if you can't change direction if people believe there's no threat on the road you're on. Now, you're saying there's no threat, so there's no need to change our behaviour. I'm saying there is. Okay? And
that's a good pushback. So maybe help me with what you think the right solution is, and how much of it is on free market people, and how much of it is on the state to fix it.
A lot of it's actually on economists, period, to making the mistake of not understanding what global warming actually means. So I don't blame the state or the private sector so much. I blame economists barging into an area where they know nothing about and producing numbers which convince politicians because they're used to taking advice from economists and they trust them. They should not. So economists have fooled us to believe global warming is a trivial challenge. It's actually an existential challenge. And on that front, there was a survey. I'll give you an idea of how different economists are from scientists on this front. There was a survey done of climate economists in 2020. They surveyed about 2,500 people. About 380 answered a question saying, what do they think is going to happen to a GDP if we hit 7 degrees of global warming by 2220? So 2 centuries away. The average answer those economists gave was GDP to be 25% smaller at 7 degrees of global warming than it would be if there's no global warming at all. Now, you talk to climate scientists, and they say that anything more than 5 degrees of global warming probably means humans won't continue to exist on the planet. It's existential. So scientists are saying anything more than 3 degrees is catastrophic. 5 degrees is beyond catastrophic, including existential risks. Economists think that 7 degrees of warming will reduce GDP by 25%. they're totally different predictions, obviously. It's damn good idea to find out which one's based on realism. Having looked at what the economists have done, they're completely based on fantasy. But unfortunately, most people don't know that, so they take economists' arguments seriously. I'm sure that's what that Department of Energy document you've got there is doing. And I wouldn't trust them as far as I can throw them.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit, and please feel free to do what you do best.
Sure.
So, do your thing. I'm enjoying this banter. Don't you think an element of economists or pro-climate change, global warming, fear porn, all this stuff, that maybe they believe what they're saying, don't you think a part of it is, if all of a sudden that solution didn't exist, they don't have a job? Let me unpack, and then, I want to hear from you. I'm in the insurance space. In the insurance space, there's such things as actuaries, okay? And actuaries, most of them, they make very good money. They make a few $100,000. It's a very, very high-paying job. And these reinsurance companies will hire them left and right, and they get a job. But recently, the last 5 years, AI can pretty much do 99% of what they do. And the 1% is their opinion or their intuition, and their gut is, I think this is table D. I think this is table C. I think we're going to prove them at this. And it's just kind of more, what they think about it. It reminds me of the old story, which is this one guy goes and hooks up with the king's daughter. The king is furious, and he hooks up with her in his castle. So he's even more furious. He sends his soldiers to go kill this guy. Now this guy is a psychic, and he predicts the future. So when the soldiers come to kill him, he says, look, before you kill me, I have one prediction that the king needs to know. It's very important to him. So they call the king says, come on down, let's talk. Of course, this is a fictional story, but I'm just sharing the story with you. He goes to the king, and the king says, what's your prediction before I kill you? He says, I have one prediction for you. What's that? You're going to die a day after I die. And the king says, what did you say? He says, you're going to die a day after I die. And the king says, shit, this guy's made some predictions in the past before. He puts him in the castle, gives him to his daughter, lives there, well-fed, everything, and of course the king died before he died. But that was his way of saying, let me scare the shit out of everybody to make sure you know me. Don't you think there's a little bit of that going on with climate change?
No, I don't. You want me to unpack why?
Please.
Okay. What would be the temperature of the planet, do you think, if there was 0 carbon dioxide in the atmosphere?
Tell me.
Minus 14 degrees Celsius. And of course it wouldn't stay at minus 14, it would hit minus 100 because the whole planet would be covered in ice and it would then reflect solar energy back into outer space. So the fact that the average temperature is not minus 14 but plus 14, I might have had the first number wrong, the second is pretty, I think minus 15 degrees or minus 11, something minus 11 to minus 15 degrees. That's the temperature we'd have if we didn't have carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, particularly water vapor, capturing photons bouncing off the surface and going back into outer space. The temperature would be that much lower. So without global warming, we wouldn't have a civilization at all. We wouldn't have life on the planet. So global warming is necessary to have a biosphere that can support life. Now, as we increase the amount of carbon dioxide, of course we're increasing that temperature. And the sort of thinking which you're all caught up in, and this is what economists have done as well, is they've said, look, people live at minus 7 degrees in the Arctic and they live at plus 35 in the tropics. That's a huge range of temperatures. Global warming is only going to increase temperature by 2 or 3 degrees. What's that in terms of across the space of the planet? I'm doing a cartoon right now, and you might actually want to take a look at the cartoon because I'm trying to get across why this is completely wrong thinking. Because we're talking about temperature across space, and we know this huge range. We think, what's a few degrees across space? It doesn't mean anything at all. But if you look at where we came from as a species, we evolved about 300,000 years ago. And about 12,000 years ago, we started to develop civilization. The reason we started developing civilization about 12 to 15,000 years ago was because the planet goes through cycles that are called Milankovitch cycles after the person who first discovered them. And they're pulses in the average temperature of the planet caused by changes in the orbit of the planet around the sun, the inclination, and so on. So roughly every 100,000 years, that we've got a cold period and a hot period. The cold period lasts about 80,000 years, which is an ice age. The warm period lasts about 10 to 20,000 years, and that's what we're in right now, which we call the Holocene. So if we go back just 20,000 years, we find the temperature of the planet was about 7 degrees colder than it is now. So the average temperature of the planet during the Ice Age was about plus 7 degrees Celsius. So going from plus 7 degrees to plus 14 degrees is what enabled us to build our agricultural systems. Now, if we hadn't built industrial civilization, we would have gone back down again into the next Ice Age. So at the moment, temperatures are falling, the natural temperature of the planet is declining, and if that kept up, we'd go back and lose another 6 degrees, 6 or 7 degrees cooler. We'd go back to an ice age, and that would destroy our civilizations. So tiny variations across time, like 6 degrees, not tiny, but 6 degrees is the difference between an ice age when Chicago's a kilometre beneath a kilometre of ice, and today where Chicago's an industrial powerhouse. That's how sensitive temperature is through time. It's far more sensitive to time than it is to space. But what economists have done is said, it's not particularly sensitive across space, so why should it be sensitive across time? They're completely ignorant of the dynamics that give us the change in temperature over time, and that's why it's so dangerous to trivialize what we're going through.
Yeah, I think for me, I sit there and I watch human behavior on what we do, and again, this is my opinion on what I think happens is, I'm in Florida, so right now by 2030, they're wanting us to lift. I live on the water. They're wanting us to lift the edge to the intercoastal 2 feet higher, right? So because why is that happening? It kind of validates to your point where why are they doing that in Florida? Because the climate and all this other stuff. But people are still, actuaries and underwriters are still underwriting homes on water, and they're still getting the insurance, and the insurance companies are not going to give insurance if they didn't feel in the next decade, 2-3 decades, something's going to happen. There's just not a good business plan for them to be able to do it. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of the insurance companies in America have left the state of California, and they've just flat out says, I'm out. And their reasoning for leaving it, like, I think Geico left, I think State Farm left, somebody can fact check this to see one of those farmers left. And a part of it is their fires that happens there. So insurance companies won't stay somewhere if they can't make the money. And so I don't know. I think on the climate change side, I do agree. I think they went from global warming and they said, well, it's probably not the good name. Let's change it to climate change. Kind of like how it used to be pro-death to pro-choice. Pro-choice is probably a better word than pro-death back in the days campaign-wise, politically. But I also watched what BlackRock did, what that ESG concept was. It kind of went away from it. Who knows? It may make a comeback. But my bigger concern is that a lot of a 20-year-old Steve Keen went to a university with the aspirations of being a tennis player, and some Marxists got a hold of him. He read Das Kapital and then read Communist Manifesto. Instead, he could have competed against Jimmy Connors. Not Connors. Connors 10 years before you, I think, right? I think Connors is in his 60s. Yeah, younger. But who knows? You may have played against some of these guys. But I worry, respectfully, that there's millions of 18, 20-year-old young next Steve Keens that may have people around them that have maybe a little bit of the framing like you that are negative about the future. And that may scare the crap out of them to not want to pursue it because they're thinking the end of the world is around the corner. I think that is a bigger damage than the risk of climate change. And I think by tenfold, it's a bigger damage. You're probably going to disagree with it.
Of course I am.
I know you are.
Yeah.
You have to. You don't have a choice but to disagree with it. Because
Well, no,
what is
I'm
the
not gonna say
alternative?
you're wrong. The alternative, see, we don't realize how fragile life on this planet is. And there's arrogance to believe we can do anything we like to the planet and it won't come back and bite us. Now, that arrogance is going to kill us. And so it's arrogance and not understanding the actual dynamics of the system that is commonplace for humans that I think is the greatest danger we face.
Don't
Now,
you think it's also the mutual arrogance of knowing for a fact you're right? Maybe you're wrong. Are you comfortable with you being wrong?
I'm working with climate scientists. Okay, so I'm looking at the models there.
But are
I
you
think if anything
comfortable with them being wrong? Are you comfortable? What if they're
Yes,
wrong?
I am, and I think in fact the mistakes they've made are to underestimate the dangers they face. Okay, for example, I'll give you one of my favourite examples there. Have you heard what's called wet bulb catastrophe?
Yes.
Okay. I asked one of the leading scientists in this area, has anybody done work on the wet bulb temperature that will kill non-humans? Because one thing which makes humans almost unique in the animal kingdom is we have sweat glands all over our body, which means we can radiate heat from our bodies much more effectively than any other animal except horses. And I thought that somebody would have said, well, in that case, we know wet bulb temperature that would kill a human used to be thought to be 35 degrees for 6 hours. We now know it's probably 31 degrees. Experimental results recently have shown that it's more likely 31 degrees wet bulb will kill the vast majority of people. So it's much closer in that sense than we think. But I said, what about if we have a wet bulb catastrophe which kills livestock? Has anybody done studies about that? He said, no, we haven't. So because animals normally sweat through their tongues, they can't get rid of heat as easily as we can. And it's quite possible a wet bulb catastrophe could hit at a lower temperature for animals and wipe out our animal stock. Now, that's the sort of thing where I thought scientists had done the right work. They haven't yet, because this is happening so quickly in terms of scientific procedures. Most of the programs, computer programs that simulate what's going to happen with the climate are written in Fortran, because that's what the first meteorological systems were first written in Fortran. That's what people still maintain. It's ancient code. It's not stuff which has got all the powers of modern software, object orientation, and functional programming and things like that. So they don't get updated fast enough, and people aren't doing the work. And so, in that sense, there are dangers that are not being considered by the climate scientists, even though they've got the technology to do it. So we're potentially underestimating the dangers we face, not overestimating.
Fair enough. I don't think I'm going to change your mind. I think
You're not going to change my mind, definitely not.
I think, our brand is called Future Looks Bright. Okay? If you go,
Is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what makes it so funny. Or if you go to FLB.com or if you go to VTmerch.com, can you go to the Future Bright collection? That's our brand. Take a look at that. For you, I'm thinking about making a shirt and selling it to see how many it sells. The one what is the opposite of Future Looks Bright? Would it be Future Looks Dark? Future Looks Grim. I wonder walking in the streets and seeing kids wearing Future Looks Grim, what they would say.
I think we're close to a golden future. This is what pisses me off because it's so dangerous. In the last quarter of a millennium, so 250 years, pretty much since the beginning of the America as a country, that's when the Industrial Revolution began. We've learned so much about the universe in that period of time. And if we can continue learning and continue expanding, we could go to a Star Trek future. And that's what I'd like to see. Okay? But at the same time, we're damaging the biosphere at the same point. Now, we are probably 20 or 30 years from being able to take production off planet. I mean, therefore, we could produce the goods and services we all consume now and far, far richer in outer space. We'd dump the waste into the sun. We could have that golden future, and that's what I'd like to see us get to. But we can't get there if we recklessly go at it at such a stage that we end up destroying the productive capacity of the planet before we get to that point.
So you must be a massive fan of Elon Musk.
Yes and no. He was a total bloody fool when he got involved with Trump. I think it was totally destructive. He should have stuck with engineering. So I was supporting Musk because I really want to see a human outpost on Mars or anywhere off planet, because my feeling is we're not going to stop the damage we're doing on the planet. We are going to destroy the capacity for this planet to support human civilization, if not human life. So in that situation, a bit like the Middle Ages, the only way to hang on to the knowledge is to have a monastery somewhere that keeps all the knowledge, and while there's chaos around everywhere else, at least the knowledge is preserved, and then we can go forward in the future. That's what I saw about Musk and the potential for getting a human outpost on Mars. Now, he's wasted so much bloody time with his right-wing politics and with his meddling in elections around the planet, including getting Trump elected. I hope he regrets that now. That I don't think he's going to get there. Probably the Chinese might beat him. But I do want to see a human outpost on Mars to give us some chance of hanging on to the knowledge we've built in the last quarter millennium and not destroying it by destroying the biosphere and not being aware we're doing it until it's too late.
I want to go to the last topic before we wrap up, Steve, and Again, I appreciate your time. By the way, have you seen the movie Project Hail Mary with Ryan Gosling? Just came out?
No, I haven't.
I think you would like it. It's about that. It's a very... I actually think you would love it. It's one of my favorite movies I've seen in the last 12 months. And on the business side, have you read the book Blue Ocean Strategy? Have you ever read Blue? I think read that as well. It sold 5 million copies. The guys that wrote it, they're academia. It's about how to differentiate your product. You're about to go through building a business. I don't think you'll be able to put that book down. But last thing before we wrap up. So, Iran, you know, this thing started a few months back. We are now where we are. You know, negotiations. I'm sure you followed what happened in Switzerland when J.D. Vance is there, and, you know, Qatar and all this stuff. Where are you at today? You know, because some people said, you know, this is going to be a next Iraq and next Afghanistan. It's going to take decades. We're going to be in it. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. What are your thoughts about where we are right now, specifically with Iran?
I think we're about to suffer a serious economic downturn caused by the damage by blocking the Strait of Hormuz. Products that come through there are absolutely critical for our civilization, and we're blocking off supplies of sulfuric acid, helium, fertilizer, the lubricating oils. All these things have been damaged, and we need them to maintain our production system. So we're about to. This is likely to start hitting the American economy in the next 4 weeks. It's literally that close, because that's the length of time from the Strait of Hormuz to where the ships would normally be unloaded. We're getting to the point where that huge hole in the supply chain, a 3-month hole, is about to arrive.
4 weeks.
And when that happens, of that order.
How nasty is it going to be? How nasty is it going to be?
Well, it'd be nastier for other countries which don't have their own capacity to produce their own fertilizer, so America's got a bit of an advantage there. But I think quite nasty, because when you take a look at the relationship between energy and GDP, it's absolutely lockstep. If you have a 10% fall in energy, you get a 10% fall in GDP. We're looking at about that scale of fall in energy because of damage to the Strait of Hormuz, or all the facilities in the Gulf. And also we're going to lose the capacity to produce so many goods that rely upon sulfuric acid, copper. There's massive use of copper right now for data centers. We won't be able to refine as much copper. So all these things are going to hit the economy start hitting in the next 4 to 8 weeks, and it'll be quite drastic. And I think this is partly why Trump is finally looking like he may make a negotiation he actually sticks with, because he's being told that the strategic petroleum reserve is down to about 20 days. You were that close to running out of supplies in America that we might finally get a sensible resolution for the stupid war that should never have happened in the first place.
So you also predicted a famine, though, right? Didn't you predict a famine?
I think a famine is likely, because with about 30% of the world's fertilizer comes through the Strait of Hormuz, and people aren't aware of the extent to which we rely upon fertilizer for food. Again, this is stuff I know from agronomists. I know not from my own research, but they claim that if we didn't have the fertilizer from the Haber-Bosch process, the stuff that gives us nitrogenous fertilizers and superphosphate, we would have a carrying capacity on the planet of about 1 or 2 billion people. We currently have 8.5 billion. We currently produce 30% more food than we need to keep all those people alive, but that 30% could fall because of a 30% fall in fertilizer. It could be more severe than that. So I don't think we're going to see a global famine, but we will see famines all around the planet when people aren't producing as much food because of the fact they haven't got the fertilizer, and also the increase in the fertilizer is meaning that some farmers are deciding not to plant crops. So for example, Australia's wheat planting, it seems to be about 50% of the usual level, because the fertilizer is costing too much to make it worth the farmers' while to plant the acreage they normally plant. So we're likely to see a large fall in global food supplies, and that will affect not just brown people countries, the usual thing where famines occur. It may even affect countries like the UK, which imports over 40% of its food. So we're likely to see some serious disruptions. And this is one time where collateral damage from a war won't occur to the civilians in the war zone. It's occurring to civilians all over the planet. Incredibly irresponsible war. It should never have started.
Yeah. So if you're wrong, would you be willing to come back and say you were wrong about what happens the next 4 weeks with the famine and the market?
Yep. Yep.
All right. So
I mean, again, in terms of timing, I'm not an expert on shipping, for example. So one thing somebody pointed out to me is that supertankers move at about 13 miles an hour maximum speed. So how many miles have you got between the Strait of Hormuz and California? And that's how many days before the supply chain disruption turns up. That sort of thing.
I got it. Yeah. And by the way, what's more valuable? What has got more impact to the world economy, the Strait of Hormuz or Panama Canal?
Probably the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, the panel's absolutely, canals, the Panama Canal is absolutely essential for, American exports to Asia and Asian exports back to America and so on. It's a critical lifeway. But the thing about the Strait of Hormuz is it locks up, it's just 30% of production of fertilizer and sulfuric acid. And I don't know that, in some ways, the Panama Canal divides the planet in serious ways. Pacific Ocean on one side, Atlantic on the other. With the Strait of Hormuz, you're blocking off the Persian Gulf. And given the idiosyncrasies of the planet, that so much of the oil is around that region, and so many critical inputs we need for our manufacturing systems come from oil. That's why the Strait of Hormuz is so important.
Steve, this has been a pleasure speaking. We started off rough. I think it was.
We did rather, yeah. We sort of I got to like you by the end. Okay,
so Steve, where can people find you? Is there a website you want guys to go look you up? Because I know we're going to put the link of the Patreon you talked about. Yeah. But is there anything else?
Well, I've got a Patreon site and a Substack site, and they both have the name Prof. Steve Kane in that link. And then my YouTube channel is also at Prof. Steve Kane. So those are probably the three main sites to go to.
We're going to put both of them below for the audience to go support. Steve, again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to our next visit.
Yeah, that was fun. We got there. Okay,
Take
see
care.
you again. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so we're going to do an experiment real quick. You know our brand is Future Looks Bright. We're going to say that Steve's future looks bleak, right? You just heard the exchange back and forth. Here's what we're going to do. Order one of these two shirts. Future Looks Bright, if you believe the future looks bright. And if you order Future Looks Bleak, we've never done this before, we will give 100% of the sales of Future Looks Bleak to Steve's Patreon. So go to vtmerch.com. We'll put the link somewhere here. Go to the site. Let's see what you're going to order. Future Looks Bright or Future Looks Bleak. When we set out to create a shoe that blends comfort, function, and luxury, we had the choice to make it fast. We had the choice to make it cheap. We chose neither. Instead, we chose Tuscany. We chose true Italian craftsmanship, each pair touched by 50 skilled hands. We chose patience, spending 2 years perfecting every detail, and we chose the finest quality at every step. Introducing the future.
He tells me that you shoot at him the day before his baby mama was shot and killed. So, and so I went back and I pulled all the video, and I've got all the surveillance, and I've got that stuff. So I got you there. I mean, I know that you're there. Why would he say that? Well, first of all, is that true? Did you shoot at him? Maybe you go. Okay. I'm in the store. You're in the store. When that happened. So, okay, so but you were in the store because I knew you were there because so I could have got off on the time frame, but I knew you were there because but so you didn't shoot at him. Why would you, right? Yeah, except for Fifth is a killer, and people pay him just to kill people. There's didn't have to have any motive. But your part in it, no one's saying you shot and killed them. That wasn't how your name came up. Your name came up because Miles said he's sold dope to you periodically, not that often, every once in a while, out of Just Eat. He's the lead man. And there was a fight between Fifth and Miles. Fifth claims that he beat Red Rum. And Red Rum says that he beat up Fifth, so I don't really know. I mean, my money's on Fifth. He's a big dude. Red Rum's kind of a smaller dude. But small guys are scrappy too. But for whatever reason, he says you shot at him, but you didn't do that.
On a Sunday morning at 2 a.m., the Democrats will have a quorum call saying, I know the absence before, but we got to make sure we've got 51 senators, Republicans, keeping that floor open for us to get this ultimately.
They were still talking. Why would they fight? Yeah, I don't know. So, right. I don't know. It's like, I don't know. Well, they all lie. really serving no, he don't even know that he's serving no, they told me, I do probation. So I do the weekends and they do the drug test every time I go outside and do the job. And even if you told me today,
Richard, I don't want to be obsessed with race, but this is a different angle I've really never heard anybody discuss. Can white writers write for you? You know what I mean?
If they write for the human being, yes. If they write, if they try to write for some idea they have of what I would be as a black person, they usually cannot do that.
Can you tell when you get a page of dialogue that they have a tin ear for what you sound like?
Yeah, I think if they just write, if I get a script just of a person, I can understand it a lot better than someone saying, and he's black, and he has all this, and you read it, it makes you sick. You know, when they write like that, and I would prefer they didn't for me.
Yeah. What would be a case of somebody trying to sound black? Could you give an example?
You know, like, I mean, I know they don't mean any harm, but they don't realize how ignorant it is when they're trying to have that black voice that some whites try to do that really don't do well.
Like, why you jive turkey?
Yeah.
Why don't you get out of here? You know, that kind of thing. Because they never really, I'm sure it's true of there are people like myself who do know what they're saying and could do it, I think. I honestly think I could.
Do what? What are you talking about?
I think I could write for you in your vernacular because of...
But what is my vernacular?
Well, because I hang out with...
Yeah, but what is my vernacular? What are you talking about?
Well, like this hog is all in my yoke.
Right, Dick. What are you talking about? I mean, you know, what is it? What is it that, what do you think I am? What do I talk like something?
No, I simply know this, that when
Explain
I know that when... Now you know as well as I do that if you're with a group of friends you grew up with or something, and a couple of old fake cats come about and talk, and you want to talk so they don't understand, you can, even as perhaps people from the Caribbean will suddenly go into a, like, have you ever been in the Caribbean where I'm just going to move back a little bit, Richard.
No, I'm just trying to understand. I don't understand.
Here's exactly what I mean. In the Caribbean, there's a dialect that is English. It sounds like it's not.
Pidgin English.
Yeah, so a man, but they're actually saying, if you saw a transcript, the man at the desk will say to you, good evening, Mr. Cabot, we think we have your room ready in just a minute. And what he was saying is, why don't you take that luggage over on the other side there? Why don't you take that luggage over on the other side there? But he didn't quite want me to know that he was correcting someone or something. So, how the hell did I get into this? Now, there's a lot of funny stuff in this book.
No, I'm trying to, I don't understand.
Well, what part don't you understand?
None of it.
No. My beginning question was, I thought, a simple, harmless one, which was, do you have the problem of a writer trying to write what he thinks is, what? The way a black guy would talk.
Do I have a problem with
when somebody hands you a script for something?
No.
No. Well, then why did you say that's a problem in the interview I read, in which now you can't just hang my ass out here like this?
Wait. Okay. When was that interview?
Might have been several years old.
Then that don't apply right now.
Because the new prior is with us.
It's not a new prior, it's just I'm different about my feelings about people and about how I feel about them, how they feel about me.
Is that a gradual thing, or was it kind of an overnight change from after you survived the horror of your...
No, I just think it's, for me, it's the way I want to be as a grown-up person. That's, and I do the best I can, man.
Are you ever approached a lot to, say, do public service announcements and...
Public service announcement?
Oh, you know, like, Richard, would you talk to kids, look into that camera and say,
Yeah, I've been approached, but I don't know that helps. I mean, unfortunately, people have to do what they would like to do. You can only show them better, you can tell them. How you live is how they live. Usually if you don't have drink around and you're not alcoholic and you're not, borderline alcoholic yourself, they tend not to have that problem. But if every time you have a problem, you take a pill or take some drink, they find it all right to do.
Are you technically a recovered alcoholic?
Technically,
Or in
I
fact?
just say that a day at a time, I try not to drink. And so far, it'll be 3 years, God's been with me.
Now, how do you account for... Anyone opposed to that? Before I do that. How do you account for the fact that Murphy has never had any such problem?
I don't know him that well. So I wouldn't account for anything about him.
Is it different, though, in that if you were coming up now...
Yes, if I was coming up now.
Supposedly, is it an easier climate for a young comic to come up now than, say, for Eddie, from what you came through?
I came through a lot.
Yeah, you did.
The period that I came through it was a lot.
You paid your dues and several other people.
Yeah, there was a lot. And he doesn't have to do that because I did it.
And there was no one ahead of you to do it for you.
Well, for me, Dick Gregory.
Dick Gregory, that's the
Dick
first-
Gregory made it
right.
possible for me.
Yeah,
And someone made it possible for Dick Gregory. We just pass it on. Keep passing the torch.
yeah. The name of your film,
Yeah.
JoJo,
Dancer.
JoJo,
Dancer, your life is calling.
yeah. And I think I was right when I said it's more biographical maybe than anything you've done before.
Yes, I would say that. I would say also that people coming to see this, it's not a Richard Pryor movie like Stir Crazy or something like this. It's a thinking movie. I believe that you have to stretch yourself in this. I don't think everyone will like it, but I think that I made a good film. If you like films, if you like a story that's complicated and deals with a lot of stuff, there are some laughs in it, but it's really a drama about behind the laughter.
And it would be very close to, I think I read something you said about it, that it's a guy who at the peak of his career has no self-esteem or something. Am I overstating it? Or
yes, you are overstating
it or ruining it?
No, you're not ruining it for me, but it's just that it's a different kind of movie for me. I've never done anything like this. And I don't know, I hope that I pulled it off.
Did wise heads say you're making a terrible mistake, keep them laughing?
No.
Well, that's good.
No.
Yeah. Hey, I'm very happy to have you here.
It's good to see you again, man.
During the break, I'll try to make clear that thing I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
We have a message. We'll be right back.
The simplest way to see it all is by pairing Humminbird Explorer fish finders with Mega Live 2 live sonar. Zero in on the best place for a bite, then see everything under the water in real time. Explorer and Mega Live 2, only from Humminbird.
It felt like the bureaucracy Olympics. I had to cram a year's worth of insurance calls and doctor's appointments into one afternoon. But then, nice AI agents handled everything. Whoa. I'm not gonna lie to you, that was really nice.
Did you shoot first? True, that bit. Did you see who shot? Why, I tried to told you. Where were you at when you shot?
By the way, getting into the movie The Life of Brian, by the way, does any of you admit to naming the group Monty Python's Flying Circus? Is there a controversy about who?
Well, yes, the problem we had of finding a good title for it was almost the worst problem we had with the whole show. We had the show written on the first one and we didn't know what to call it. And we had a whole lot of fanciful titles, like we wanted to call it a horse, a spoon and a basin. And a basin, which I really liked. And somebody else wanted to call it Bun Wacket, Buzzard, Stubble and Boot. Owl Stretching Time. The
toad elevating moment. There were all these suggestions. And one day we sat around and got very drunk, and we had to come up with a title. And somebody had already started to call it the Flying Circus. In fact, the BBC had started to call it that, and they'd started writing it in their schedules in ink, So they said, well, could you call it the Flying Circus, because otherwise we have to write out new schedules. So we said, it's a nice title. And then we couldn't decide who. We thought it might be Gwen Dibley's Flying Circus, because she'd been Michael Palin's music teacher when he was 11. And then somehow we went off Gwen Dibley. I don't know why. She could be famous,
Had someone else used her name, perhaps?
No, nobody got her first.
Gwen Dibley.
And somebody came out with Monty Python, and we all fell about. And I can't explain why. We just thought it was funny that night.
Presumably you haven't been sued by anyone named that, which sometimes happens when you're...
Groucho Marx had that, didn't he? He had a character called Phineas X Fritterwaggle.
One of the most preposterous names.
That's right.
One showed up in Corning, Iowa or somewhere and sued him.
Sued him. Second night, yeah.
Thaddeus T. Flywheel? No,
something like that.
One of them. By the way, I have read The Life of Brian's script. I don't know whether this is the shooting script or is it ex post facto or after the fact.
It's the shooting script with a few things still left in that we actually edited by the time the movie got on the screen.
Oh, so there's a few things in here that aren't in the film?
Yes, one or two of the offensive things which we took out.
But if you just glance down the list of characters, the Virgin Mandy and Mr. Big Nose and the man further forward, and so there are many of these that are just wonderful. There's an ex-leper, which is a character, sort of stock character these days, isn't it? And a deadly Dirk and Pilot's Wife and a boring prophet. And in among Biggest Dickus and Intensely Dull Youth and Simon the Holy Man and so on, there's this wonderful mixture of character types. And then you notice that there are only, I think, 6 names. A casual observer would notice that most of the parts are played by the same people.
Well, yes, the 6 of us played a lot of them. We had what
there are other people, of course.
Yes, we called our repertory company. There were 5 of them, and they played everything. But on the previous film, the Holy Grail, I remember the last day but one of the movie being driven to the location, and I said to the driver, I said, you've managed to sneak into a couple of seats, haven't you? How many have you actually been in? And he said, I played 11 parts so far. And he was aiming to get it up to 15 by the end of the movie. He said, if the driver's playing 15, we're working pretty hard.
Tell me, which way the controversy has been flowing lately, and on which side of the Atlantic is it more intense? I remember I don't know how many weeks ago it was, I heard from the radio announcement of something that sounded in its tone as if there had been an outbreak of World War II or something, and it had to do with outraged religious groups that had seen
here in New York.
Film in New York. Yeah. I think I switched on the radio to the phrase "a vicious attack on Judaism." Now, at what point did you all sit down and decide to make this vicious attack on Judaism and Christianity and everything that everyone holds sacred? How can we talk about that?
Well, we just, after the Holy Grail, somebody suggested that it would be interesting to try and write a comedy set at the time of Christ. And you see, well, you know this, but when you start to write, you don't know where it's going to go. So you say, well, let's try this direction, and maybe it'll work, and maybe it won't. And we had an idea, maybe, that Brian was the 13th disciple, but he had a very demanding wife, and he was always late, so that, he arrived 2 minutes after the water had been turned into wine, and he missed everything, and that he never got to the Last Supper because his wife had friends coming round, and he was going to meet them at the garden afterwards, and he went to a club called the Garden. We tried this, and we found it just didn't work, because the moment that you got near the figure of Christ, I mean really near, it just really wasn't funny, because Christ was wise and flexible and intelligent, and he didn't have any of the things that, I mean, comedy is about envy, right, greed, malice, avarice, lust, stupidity. I remember an American, Harvey Orkin, once telling me, and he said, you cannot make a comedy about St. Francis of Assisi, there's nothing funny about it.
Yes, as they say, where do you go with it? To hell would be the answer. So, but, even even talking about religious subjects in the way we are now offends some people, and I don't know what assumptions lie behind that. One of them, of course, being that there's nothing funny about certain things. This is wrong. I can't think of anything there's nothing funny about in some sense. And same people who talk about how humor is a healing, wonderful thing, then don't want it applied to certain areas. Weird. A lot of.
I find it very difficult. But the trouble is, what do you mean by religion? I mean, some of the PBS viewers, I believe, may have seen a series called The Long Search by a guy called Ronald Eyre, who made it for the BBC. And it was an investigation into 13 programs, basically into 13 religions. I think he did 3 on Buddhism. He travelled and did all the basic main religions in some detail. Judaism, Lutheranism, Catholicism. I think he even did the Church of England. I think he even found a program for that. I'm surprised it got in under the heading of religion, but anyway.
Maybe he was there for variety.
It's a little light relief round number 6. And the thing about it, when he came to see this film, he said he thought it was a very religious film. And I may surprise you if I say I think it's a religious film. I think all the messages in it, in fact, are profoundly religious. But Ron Eyre did say, and I hope he won't mind my quoting him, that there's a lot of people that he thinks are not religious will be angry about it. And it simply depends on what you mean by religion. If you take religion to be a sort of revelatory and rather authoritarian creed, in which certain things are handed down, must not be examined, must be obeyed, and there is a sort of an authoritarian structure enforcing it. If that's what you mean by religion, then I suppose it is in many ways anti-religious, but it's certainly not against Christ.
Disagree with you that the atomization of the Democrat Party is certainly underway, but I think if you look to Europe, specifically France and the coalition that they have on the left there, it's the Red-Green Coalition, and that's what they are building here now, is the Red-Green Coalition, which is the communists and the Islamists coming together to form a bloc. And you've seen this throughout Western nations in Europe. That's currently what's happening here. If you don't believe me, go look at Michigan. What was the difference, by the way, in between Espaillat in New York and the woman that beat him? She had converted to Islam. He's a Dominican. She's a Dominican. They both speak Spanish. They both have left-wing views on immigration and every other issue. He was the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, but she had converted to Islam. So that, to me, I think is the new coalition for the left in this country.
Again, and while I think that's something very important that we need to bring attention to, I would be in favor of banning. I think we should absolutely ban immigration from all Muslim countries. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think anywhere where you have terrorist groups, Islamic terrorist groups, we just need to put a stop to it. Because it's a direct threat to us. And I don't think that's, someone's going to say that's Islamophobic or whatever. I don't really care. You can call me whatever you want. What I'm trying to do, you can call me Mr. Safe. And what I'm trying to do is keep America safe. And if you have Al-Qaeda or Hamas or Hezbollah or whatever, if you have Islamic radical terrorist organizations in your country, you're not coming here. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, listen, the purpose, you can read America's immigration law. Like, I'm on the side of the law. They're on the side of, like, absolute atomization of what it means to be an American. Like, the laws of our country are very, very clear about what the purpose of immigration is. And we've had massive immigration pauses throughout American history.
Senator Collins supports and advocates for more funding for cancer research so that people can have better treatments, better outcomes, and live better lives as cancer survivors. Thank you, Senator Collins. Continue fighting for our families.
And there's always been, right? We've gone through different periods of immigration and new immigration laws came in. We act like immigration policy in terms of who we're letting in and not letting in are like absolutes, like they're written into the Constitution. Just they're true forever. They're responding to certain periods of time in American history, and we're in a different period right now.
Totally. Unless you can prove that your culture is going to be harmonious and compatible with American culture, you shouldn't come here. Unless, like, if your country, I mean, my rule would be the 51st state. I wonder if you agree with this, Congressman. because you're from a nice, wonderful part of America. Like, if your country wouldn't make a good border state with West Virginia, you shouldn't come here. Like, we should not have immigration from that country.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Like, nobody wants to live next. Dude, the biggest left-wingers don't want to move to Somalia. They don't want Somalia as their next door neighbor, right? Or Yemen, okay? Like, they don't want these countries, or Iran, or whatever. Like, they don't want these countries as their neighbors. They're failed states, okay? And so, why would we be bringing in people from Pakistan if you don't want to live if you don't want to live there? You're bringing the nation here by doing that. I think that's like an insane. That's a rule that our great grandparents followed, which is like, no, we actually want to live next to people that are harmonious with our culture, language, and religion.
Oh, absolutely. And if you don't think that Western culture and values are incompatible with Islam, go take a look at the experiment of Turkey, right? Ataturk started the Turkish Republic after World War I, a secular society that was being held in check by the military to ensure that Islamists didn't take over. Guess what? They still did. It lasted for a little while, that experiment went on for a little while, and it failed. It failed. And everywhere you have tried this, it has failed, and where they have gone, it has failed. You have to comport to their values, to their culture. We have to have Sharia-compliant lending. We got to do all these other, but we don't have to. We don't have to do any of these things. And someone made the intentional immigration decision that, look, take the continent of Africa, for instance. And I know we've talked about this before, but it's always on my mind. Who made the decision that, you have all these Christians in Nigeria who are being slaughtered, and we say, yeah, maybe we don't need so many of them. How about the guys from Somalia? Remember Black Hawk Down? Yeah, let's get those guys and bring them into the country. So, not that I'm saying I want a massive immigration from Nigeria or otherwise, but how do you, somebody make that decision?
No, totally. I mean, you're exactly correct. I don't know why our immigration policy is treated like a religion. Like, this isn't a religion. Like, our immigration policy is one of the very, very lowest possible things on the priority list that I have. Like, it's one of the last things we should think about is like bringing in new people, because there's so many people that are right-born American citizens by birth and right that are here that are totally forgotten about, that are totally neglected, and that can't get the pothole fixed in front of their street. And like, we betrayed those people, and we betrayed so many Americans. Like, we just don't need more. We just don't need to bring in the problems of the world. Like every citizen in the world doesn't have a right to be an American. We can barely provide for the people that are actually here. And so, yeah, I mean, that's my take. I always love talking about this with you, because most members of Congress go to the completely, neutered, like, we are a nation of immigrants. It's like, not these immigrants, okay? Like, not Somali immigrants. No, we're not.
Well, and look, West Virginia is the epitome of this. No one's paid the price of this immigration policy and globalization and all these other things that have been pushed on the state of West Virginia, where our folks have been there. I'm a seventh generation West Virginian. I mean, we're talking about people who've been in West Virginia for well over 200 years. And, and this is why this, and I know this seems separate, but it is related, the H-1B visa program. This thing drives me insane. So, by the way, securing the southern border is a great thing, and it's something that I 100% support, and I'm so happy that we've done it. But when you're talking about people coming from countries that have terrorist groups in them, this Muslim migration that we're having in the country, it's legal. This is legal immigration that is bringing people in. And the H-1B visa program that is replacing American workers, it needs to be eliminated. H-1B visa, OPT, STEM OPT, legal immigration, in my view, in many regards, is more dangerous to American society and our future than illegal immigration, to be honest with you. I really do think that.
Young people are waking up to this. Young people are waking up to this. Do you think that we're reaching a point that we are going to be able to actually stop these programs, shut down these programs?
I mean, for my part, I'm going to keep beating the drum on it, because you go look, and I know we all kind of fixated on it for a moment, but people need to stay on this. What happened over there at Xbox and Microsoft, where they lay off thousands of workers and then apply for thousands of H-1B visas. The idea behind this program is, oh, we can't find workers who are qualified to do these jobs. Now, that's not what this is about. This is about bringing in cheap foreign labor, putting them on an H-1B visa, and then, by the way, most of these are on the pathway to citizenship. And most of them start in the OPT program, where they are getting education, and so they're in our universities and working. And by the way, when they're in OPT, they're not paying Medicare taxes, the employer's not paying payroll taxes, so they get the tax benefit, the employer does. Then they're on H-1B, then they're on a green card, and next thing you know, they're in Dearborn, Michigan, electing whoever up there. So, I mean, this doesn't make any sense what we're doing here. You see, there's 100 million people in the United States right now who are currently not working. You're telling me that we don't have any computer scientists or engineers in that 100 million people in America? I don't believe that. We have the best people on the face of the planet here, and it's a corporate handout by the government. And this is not free market. This is not the free market. This is corporate handout, so we can undercut the wages of all of our workers who have been working so hard to get the education that we've been telling them they need to get. And next thing you know, they wake up and they're a barista at Starbucks with $150,000 worth of college debt.
And the largest Hindu temple in the world is being built in Texas, right? In Frisco. It's like, yeah. It's like, it is actually,
the H-1B visas, by the way.
I do agree. This is going to get clipped by Media Matters. I do totally agree with systemic institutionalized racism. It's the H-1B program. Like, yes, there is systemic and institutionalized racism. It's the H-1B program. That's exactly what it is. Because we know precisely what happens when American workers are mass replaced by Indian workers. We know exactly what the route is and what the pathway is for that fraud. And it's actually India's foreign policy. This is India's state policy for the conquest of the West, and it's already happened in Canada. It's already wholesale happened in Canada, total and complete replacement of the population with the assisted suicide of the federal government in Canada. They've killed 100,000 native-born Canadians and replaced them, and they've done it through their own version of an H-1B program there. And so, yeah, it must stop. We have to end it. Like, it would be my life's mission, actually, to end the H-1Bs. I see absolutely no reason.
I'm totally with you. We need to get rid of it, and I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's totally counterintuitive. I mean, so you think about it like this. We go tell everybody, after the globalists send our jobs overseas to these other countries, manufacturing jobs, blue-collar jobs, and say, you guys need to learn how to code. Oh, hey, by the way, the coding jobs, those are gone now too, because we're bringing everybody in on an H-1B visa because we don't want to pay you what you're asking for. The American worker...
Susan Collins secured critical K-12 education funding for Maine students. This year, she brought Maine more than $70 million to support students with disabilities. Susan Collins supports Maine students and Maine's future.
Yeah, in a government that actually looks at the American citizen first instead of viewing ourselves as king of the globe. All right, it's really nice. It'd be really nice to have a lot of Riley Moores in Congress. Let's do that. Everybody support Riley Moore. You can follow him right here. You can follow him right here on X. Somebody who is clear-eyed about the problems of America and how to fix it for Americans, and it's refreshing to hear. Thank you, Congressman. Godspeed. I'll see you in West Virginia for our moonshine tour.
Hey, let's do it. Thanks, Benny.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a barn burner. If you have barn burner days like that, and if you have stressful days, I could recommend enough Bon Charge. Bon Charge is how I relax at the end of the day. It is a sauna blanket or sauna mask. It's very good for you, as you can see here. It's a black box all day. Sometimes I don't even see the sun. I hate that, but hey, campaign season is right around the corner. Make sure that you are getting that delicious red light that your body so desperately craves, especially in the winter months. Right now it's nice and sunny outside most days, but ladies and gentlemen, this is how you stay rested, refreshed, relaxed. Right before bed is where I use mine. Doesn't matter when you use it. ladies and gentlemen, is What's Your Body? Bond Charge ships worldwide. All products are HSA and FSA eligible, pre-tax savings, plus free shipping on every single sauna blanket and 12-month warranty. Go to bondcharge.com/Benny. Use the coupon code Benny to save 15%. That's bondcharge.com/. All right, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of something refreshing and relaxing, let's talk children's books with Rand Paul's wife, Kelly Paul, who joins the program for the first time live right now. Kelly Paul, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Benny. It's great to be with you.
So I want to talk about your children's book, but I'd like to end on that note. I want to begin on a very different note, I hope you don't mind, because
I need to own some stuff. No, I don't have the pass. I used to get the pass. That's a couple dollars a month, I think it's worth it. No, I haven't gone in that many years. I've been playing this game for like 10 years. Almost. I mean, if you want to be exact, like 9 years this month.
And it's crashed.
Mm-hmm. I am going to request decisions. I know no one's gonna want to give them those. Especially since I don't think did I participate in the last four? Yeah, from yesterday. I meant in the last bout. I think I missed a few in the last round. Why am I in a what? Someone else asked me that a little while ago. Not today, but like weeks ago.
You said there were no babies in that car. There's no more kids in your car? In the car. Okay, alright. So then maybe they crashed into another car with a kid.
Well, no, you never judge a book by its cover. Don't let your guard down.
What's her name? See here, fire department's on the way. Okay?
Yeah, I gotta mess around with the deck here a little bit. It's no wonder. Well, not to mention, let's see, I'm a 12, they're a 14. But other than that, I'm 15 and a 16 the other day. As the victims and suspects are tended to, reopening lanes becomes a priority for other officers as they race against the clock to get medics on scene. That is it